Yep. Uh, so this isn't really a kid's message. I was going to change messages, but Sarah said that I shouldn't. Um, and I listened to Sarah. No, just kidding. Um, Still debating actually. We can switch gears pretty quick usually. Nah, we probably should go with what the Lord put on my heart the first time. He knew that we would be really small. And I think you need this message about parenting because he has no kids. So if you would turn in your Bibles to Proverbs 6. It's right here. There's just a couple verses to get us thinking about parenting. And my bulk of the scripture is taken out of Proverbs this morning. So I'm calling it Proverbs Parenting or the Proverbs Parent. So Proverbs chapter 6, verse 20 says, "My child, guard the commands of your father and do not forsake the instruction of your mother. Bind them on your heart continually, fasten them around your neck. When you walk about, they will guide you. When you lie down, they will watch over you. When you wake up, they will talk to you." There's no other bigger influence in the life of a child than their parents. I mean, there's all we've talked about this repeatedly about all the influences that the world can exert on you, and us adults find that very difficult. But still, in the back, difficult to separate out sometimes the voice of God and the voice of whatever else is speaking to us. But I don't know about you, but I think for most people, the voice of your parents are there as well. Whether that's good or bad, right? Because not all parents are good parents. You can have those tapes that run through your mind um, that are negative. I have some of those in my life that I had to work to erase to not believe. But your parents are there. I mean, a church, a Christian school, a circle of friends can influence and deposit a little bit into your kids' heads, but they can't translate the truth of God's word and the authentic faith into real life. In other words, your kids are going to watch you and see what faith is like. That's the one thing that I as a parent, I try to keep that in mind, that if I could not model what I believed, then my children had no chance to see it. Maybe they'd see it in somebody else, but would that really be authentic? Because everybody can put on a good front when they want to, right? And churches tend to have a lot of people that are putting on their best on Sunday. It's, at 2 a.m. when there's trouble or the baby's crying, colicky, or a kid's sick, or somebody's in trouble or distress. That's when you really see what people are made of and what they really believe. So parents have the most effect, obviously, on the development of the thinking and view of God than anything else. I can be an influence as their pastor, certainly, and we heard that a little bit this morning, right? We come here, and when I read my Bible by myself, I don't always understand it, but then we come here and the teacher helps me understand it, and that's not just me. There's other good teachers in this church, but you taking that the next step in fleshing that out in real life. How does that really work? And what are the sacrifices that go along with it? That's really important. It brings the printed page alive and will stick with them more than something they read. Now, it's important to read it, and it's important to understand it, and it's important to remember it, but in flesh, you get all of that at the same time. So, interesting that, there it is. Interesting that 2 Timothy points out to this. It says, "For I'm mindful of the sincere faith within you, which first dwelt in your grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice, and I'm sure that it's in you as well." So Paul is saying, your family's had a pattern of faithfulness, and he's giving his grandmother and his mother credit for that development of faith, because they demonstrated it. Paul's the writer here. Paul saw it. And these two certainly used the tools of wisdom, understanding, and knowledge in raising Timothy. And he became someone we're still talking about 2,000 years later. So I'd say that's a success, a faithful man, a God-fearing man, a teacher in the church. We don't know much about his mother. We do know that she and his grandmother made an incredible investment in his spiritual life. I mean, what else is more valuable in the lives of your kids? I always told my boys growing up, I said, I don't care if you're a garbage man or what you do for a living. I just want you to be, a godly man. And I'm one for two. It's been said that when all is said and done, children are nothing more than an extension of their parents' egos. And I really, really hated that when I first heard that, because I really endeavored for that not to be the case. I never forced my kids into doing something in my life. My dad kind of vicariously wanted me to do things that he couldn't do. So he pushed me into athletics. Not that I minded; I loved athletics, but his life was impacted by life circumstances and prevented him from following his. We played in the minor league baseball, so he had to stop that. So he had some issues with that, and I knew about that growing up, right? So he put that on me. I've endeavored not to do that. So when I read that statement, I found it pretty offensive. But the more I thought about it, I realized it actually is right, because it goes to the good too, right? We want our children to be have good manners, dress well, make good grades, be socially accepted, so people would see what a good parents we were. When I first started out, that's how I felt about it. But as I got older, and now as a grandparent, I don't really care what people think. I just want good kids. In other words, good morals, good understanding, logical thinking, and the amount of rules that I would have has also shrunk tremendously. When I was younger and my kids were little, we had way more rules than we needed. And now I have very few rules. There's only a couple of core things that are really important that we need to make sure that we teach and translate. Maybe more than a couple, but as far as making rules goes, that's the case. It was the difference between me looking at my kids as a reflection of me, and me and Laura, my wife, understanding that, and she understood this way earlier than I did. That we needed to do what's best for them. And they did. And of course, they don't always know what's best for them, right? Even though when Ellen is 5 now, and Josh said, posted on Facebook this morning that's my grandson. He's four turning 5 in August, so almost coming up on 5. And he told his dad, well, no, you just don't understand. Let me go show you. So that's an 18-year-old attitude, right? We had to learn to do and to strive for what's best for them and not what would satisfy, our pride. A good parent views their child as a person, a feeling, thinking individual, not a responsibility, not a possession. There's too much of that in the world today, unfortunately. You have to be the foundational example of what they need to be like. So Scripture tells us in Proverbs 22:6 to train up a child in the way he should go, or they should go, should be they. Even when they are old, they will not depart from it, right? So why is it when we think of parenting, we think what we should do rather than what we should be? What is training? Well, training isn't telling, David, clean your room. Is that training? That's not training. If I say it every day, now it's training, right? No. Training is a process. If you're a beginner, you often have to watch somebody do it first. Then you have to be involved in that process. Eventually you can do it yourself. And certainly you need to be reminded to do it if it's not a habit. There's a whole process of training. That's training. Train up a child in the way they should go. It's not just telling them one time and then expecting them to be obedient because you're the parent. That does not work. I tried that. It does not work. Makes you very frustrated. But what it is taking their hand, wherever they're at, whether they're 4.5 or 14.5, taking them where they're at and teaching them how to do whatever it is, or to not do whatever it is you're trying to train them the way they should go. Whether that's a spiritual thing or whether that's a life skill, which can be the same. A life skill can be a spiritual thing as much as anything else. But more so than that, we have to be an example to them. I want to make sure that I emphasize that all the way through, that as I've gotten older, it's become more and more evident to me that even though I did not communicate things to my kids, they picked them up by the way I lived my life. And my life communicated more to them oftentimes than my words. And I'm not just talking about those times when it might have been hypocritical. They certainly do always pick up on that. I think they're pretty looking for that maybe. So keep that in mind as we move through this. So a child who's instructed mostly with words can easily deviate from what they are told, but if you're taught by example, that embeds the idea in their mind. They have an idea what you're talking about. They have an idea of the right way, which is, again, why that example is so important. So the issue really isn't whether you're going to be an example as a parent. You're an example no matter whether you want to be or not. The issue is, what kind of example are you going to be? So that's not about your kids. That's about you and me. What kind of example are we going to be? And if you don't have kids, like David, I keep picking on David. He doesn't have any kids. But David, the kid, you can be an example of the children. You're not going to be as big of an influence as a parent would be, but you can practice now on other people's children because, hey, when we're here together, they look to everybody here. That's a fact. Jennifer, Justin, they look to you guys. I know you guys don't have kids. They look to you. You can be an example. Frito looks up to Justin quite a bit. So he's definitely been an example in her life as he took care of her when she was really young, before she was in school. So the question is, what kind of example are you going to be? Not whether you're going to be. Studies show that if you come from an alcoholic household, that if one of your parents is an alcoholic, there's a high rate of alcoholism in the children of those parents. Same with abuse. People that live in a house that has abuse going on tend to become abusers. That's just statistics. makes sense because the example they got was not a good example. It was a hurtful example. In the same way, children whose parents live righteously according to the Word and with a life of faith, there's a much higher statistical probability of producing children who do likewise. So the Bible makes sense from that perspective, right? Let your father and mother be glad, and let her rejoice who gave birth to you. By the way, for those of you that are online and here, happy Mother's Day. If my mom is listening, I hope you are. Happy Mother's Day, Mom. I'm sorry your card scared you. So Laura put this little wind-up butterfly thing in her card. Did I tell you this already? I think I did. Yeah, and she opened up her card, and this thing flew out. And she called us and went, "You gave me a heart attack, oh my gosh." But then I laughed so hard, I laughed for an hour. So she had to call and tell us that. So, gotcha. Sorry, I was in the middle of reading this. Let your father and your mother be glad, and let her rejoice who gave birth to you. Give me your heart, my son, and let your eyes delight in my ways. Let your eyes delight in my ways. How we live equals the kind of children that will be turned out. So if our children are not developing spiritually and morally as they should, it doesn't necessarily mean there's something wrong with them, but it indicates maybe there's something lacking in our example or lacking in our parenting. And as a rule, as children become what parents allow them to become. If you want them to, if you truly mean you can be anything you put your mind to, or you can become anything in the world, then you have to encourage them and allow them to go that direction. If you curtail them in that way, you will curtail them in that way, and they will not develop the same way. Usually well-adjusted children are the products of parents who provide a balanced diet of security, love, friendship, respect, and discipline. Training. It's the example that we set. Again, not necessarily our words that help our children become a blessing to us and to themselves. A righteous man who walks in his integrity, how blessed are his sons after him. Have you ever thought about that? His sons are blessed because they have this example of a righteous person to follow. And that in turn blesses them. You want your children to be blessed? Be a good example. I know I'm a broken record this morning, aren't I? Do you get that I'm saying you need to be a really good example to your kids? Okay. And you need to be there. You need to be there. Often being there is the most important thing. Just being there. It doesn't even necessarily need to be, you need to be involved. Just being there. Right? Man, I tell you, that's hard sometimes. Life is so busy especially when you're starting a career and all the things that come with, usually young homeowners and young family, young kids, and there's 47 soccer practices and all that. Just being there and being a servant of your children as far as their needs go, not overindulging them, and there's a fine line, is really important. Ask yourself this: why do some parents fail where others succeed when outwardly it seems they've pretty much done the same thing? It can't be that our ability to parent rests on our personalities or on even our socioeconomic status, nor is it contingent on the amount of education we have or on our religion or race or any of that kind of stuff. It ultimately comes down to one thing: being there. The rod and rebuke give wisdom, but a child left to himself brings shame on his mother. It really gets me that people will really worry about their pets. If they're going to travel, they'll really worry about somebody taking care of their pets, right? And they should, because your pets need to be taken care of. Yet a lot of some of the same people will let their children go off and I have no idea where they're at or what they're doing. Now, I'm not a fan of helicopter parenting. That's the other end of the spectrum. But you need to be there for them, and you need to be there in a way that gives them ensures their safety. Being there means your child knows that they will never have to face life alone, and you will always share their joy and sorrows, their success and failure. Now, I wrote that because my kids are grown adults, right? So from that perspective, that's what I want to instill in them, that no matter what happens, I'm still your dad. No, whether you're in the church, out of the church, and that's a big thing, right? For covenant churches, that's a big thing. I've heard guys get up and say that they disown their children because they're not in the church. Oh man, my heart broke. How can you do that? That's your child. That's still your responsibility. They can make their own decisions. I want my kids to make their own decisions. I don't want to make a decision based on what I say, because that's not their decision. That's my decision. They need to make their decisions based on what they think, feel. So teach them to reason. Give them knowledge. Give them respect, and respect their decisions. And ultimately, put your faith in God. Think about all the kids that I've pastored in 27 years. And how many of them aren't in church and how many of them are in church. And there are more, I think, not than in. And I could look at that and say, well, obviously it's a failure. But we're hearing now some of them are drifting back, right? They're starting to question the decisions they made in their 20s. As in their 30s, they're saying, well, I don't think I really was as smart as I thought I was in I thought I was pretty smart in my 20s, and I'm telling you, most everybody does. The most intelligent person on the planet is the 18-year-old that just graduated high school. Just ask them, they'll tell you. And I think I'm coming on 61 and next month. I think I'm one of the dumbest guys on the planet now, because the more I learn, the more I think that I don't know, right? And that's wisdom right there. Knowing that's wisdom. So it means that a child knows, regardless of how young or old they are, that what they do, their parents will never desert them or give up on them, right? That's a commitment. And you think that that's a given. I'm here to tell you that there is a whole generation that are pushing their parents away right now. There's psychotherapy is encouraging that. There's a whole generation that are pushing their parents away. And I'm not Jennifer, I'm not talking about you and your parents at all. It's okay. Justin tried, but I'm too stubborn. And that means that those parents have to let them go through that and have to stand by them no matter what, right? Because we're talking from the parental perspective this morning. We're not talking from the child perspective, because parenting's like marriage. It's till death do you part. I know some parents, 18, out the door. And that's okay. There's some of that. Some eagle has to often push the chicklet out of the nest to make him fly. There's some of that. That doesn't mean that the eagle often will catch the chicklet if they don't fly before they hit the ground. It's the same with parenting. No matter what, your child and you are bound in this life. You don't have to keep whatever they're doing a secret. You don't have to approve of what they're doing. You don't have to, you can openly pray for them in your church family. If your son turns into a junkie, it doesn't matter. He's still your son. You're to be there for him no matter in any way that you can. And God forbid any of that would happen to any of us, but it does. And if you taught your children right and you lived humbly before them, you tried to demonstrate your faith, you don't have anything to blame yourself for. Right? Moms especially like to blame themselves. Remember back in the day, I'm probably dating myself, there was Dear Abby was a column. You guys remember that? Yes. Anybody else remember that? Dear Abby? So it was a column back when we had newspapers every day, and she was a syndicated columnist, which means she was in newspapers all across the country. And you know, she was the person you'd write into, Dear Abby, I've got this problem. And she would give you some kind of often very homespun kind of advice kind of stuff. Very popular. Well, she had one lady write in and said, Dear Abby, I'm a complete failure. I wish my children never would have been born. On and on and on and on, right? So Dear Abby posted it, and she asked her readers to write in and tell them what they thought about that. And you know what the astounding thing was? 80% of the people that responded, the women that responded, the mothers, felt the exact same way. Your mother often has expressed to me similar sentiments at times. And it's not you. It's not you. You have a brother, right? I'm sure my parents got pretty frustrated with me. I was definitely not the perfect child for sure. Especially going off and joining the Navy and then not calling for months at a time. That certainly, you know, I didn't understand then that that's a bad thing. To give my parents a heart attack. They want to know that you're okay, and there's no way to know unless you call them in that situation. So there shouldn't be any blame, but as demonstrated at least by the Dear Abby, there's probably a lot of blame in people's minds. You know, what I should have done, what I did and didn't do. Jesus said, in understanding our need as people for someone to have our back, just like our parents need to have our back, Jesus said, I will not leave you orphans, I will come to you, right? I will not leave you orphans, I am coming to you. I misquoted, sorry, I am coming to you. It's ongoing. So why should we ever abandon our children? Because we are the despicable sinners in God's eyes, right? And here the Messiah is telling us he's not going to abandon us. And that's despite how we are. There's no reason for us to give up on our children. If we're to exemplify Yahweh in our lives, we can never emotionally desert our children. Protecting them does not mean keeping their behavior secret either. That's not protection. We must instill in our children the knowledge that we will help them meet their needs at any given moment in times of rejoicing as well in times of need. We must convey to them that we're conscious of them, concerned for them and their well-being, even when we're not in their presence, even if we've been kicked out of their life. We still have an obligation as parents to be there for them. So that leads us to, what do we do when we're there for them? We instruct them, right? Especially in their formative years. I didn't see that. Oh, I got to take that out of my gallery. I'm sorry. Not supposed to use that. Being there means we direct and discipline our children. Now, discipline means what? Discipline, when I say that, a lot of people think about corporal punishment. And that's not what I'm saying. Discipline is correction. There's a million ways to correct. Now, We are going to see stuff about the rod, and that is leading to corporal punishment. But you can use the rod as an instrument, or you can make the rod different instruments. You can use different things for correction. Some things work on some kids, and some things don't work on some kids. For instance, I spanked Freya twice. Ever. Twice. That's it. In what? 7 years. She behaves for me. I do not have to repeat myself. She responds, right? Now, did I discipline her? Yeah. Put her in timeout. We took things from her, etc. We used all different kinds of things. Only had to spank her twice. And didn't even want to, but she lied. And that's the one thing that we don't ever abide, is lying. It's automatic. It's 3 swats, right? So we have clear rules for that. So it's not excessive. Never do it in anger. Never do it when you're emotional. So if you get into an exchange with your child, you have the other spouse do it if they're available, or you put it off until you can calm down. I recommend don't put it off too long, because that will lose the effectiveness of the example that you're trying to do. But it should be used very, 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 very sparingly and never abusive, right? Too many people use it in an abusive manner. Now, that's Freya. Justin, oh my gosh, that boy would never respond to a whipping. And of course, he's my oldest, and I was learning all these things, and I probably spanked too easy back then. I would do it totally different now, which is why I'm trying to share this with you. It didn't work on him. It didn't register with him. Not that he didn't care. He was more worried about the actual getting the spanking than whatever he did. So it was more of a distraction. Now, if I took a toy away, that worked for him way better. So you have to know your kids. But it's discipline is correction. Correction doesn't even have to be, it could involve training, right? It could involve just training them to do, because they don't know. So you have to do a little investigative work. And I know teenagers with attitudes, right? That's what you're getting to face, Sarah. And they know, they're smart enough to know and how to push your buttons, and it becomes difficult to discern what to do at that point. And at some point, you just have to let them make mistakes. I will say that as well. Let your children make mistakes and let them suffer the consequences. Limit the extent of the consequences. Don't let them make mistakes that cause life-altering consequences, like go to jail or anything like that. Certainly you should step in, but let them fail. They need to learn how to fail gracefully and rebound from it. Almost all the successful people in the world have failed terribly before they were a success. You learn more from failure than you do from success. Thomas Edison tried over, 400 and something filaments before he got the light bulb right? What if he stopped at 300? And probably somebody else would have invented the light bulb, but they would have had to fail a bunch to do it. He had an idea, and he was trying to figure it out. It's the same with life. Life is like that. So we have to give our children the ability to learn how to fail as well. But instructing them, there's in Proverbs chapter 1, you should still be in Proverbs. I haven't asked you to turn anywhere other than Proverbs. 2 through 4. The Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel. To know wisdom and instruction. Teach them to know wisdom, how to properly use knowledge. To discern the sayings of understanding. Think matters through to an intelligent conclusion. Help them to learn and know how to reason. God gave us minds to use them. He gave us the ability to think things through and to reason and to use logic. And we should, when we read the Word, we should also use discernment that the Spirit gives us, of course, but things have to make sense, right? 3, to receive instruction in wise behavior. Show them how to act as God would have them act. Wise behavior. No, the Lord wouldn't want you doing that. Or yeah, the Lord would like you to do that way. Teach them that. Righteousness, justice, and equality. What is right, what is fair, and what is moral. And that all comes from Scripture pretty much. What do we have? To give prudence to the naive. To give prudence to the naive. Help them develop the ability to detect deceit. I am very skeptical by nature, and some people are, and some people go the other way, very trusting by nature. I have had to learn how to be more trusting in my life, especially as a follower of Christ and as a pastor. So you may also have a bent one way or another. Try not to raise a child that has that same bent. I think they come pre-wired with one or the other, more or less. So here again, we have to the youth knowledge and discretion. They have to receive that knowledge, the right facts, and the values that are programmed into their hearts. So there it is, discretion. This is the last one, the ability to judge what is proper and correct. So disciplining doesn't necessarily mean punishing. It's any form of correction. So like I said, the most important aspect, or I didn't say this, but in disciplining, in correction, the very most important thing that I learned isn't that you need to have a lot of rules, and it isn't that you need to have a few rules. It's that whatever rules you do have, you are consistent in your response to your kids. Consistency, consistency, consistency. That's why I could tell you, every time you lied, you would get a spanking. That was one of, I think, the only thing that was well, we had a white line, that if you go across a white line because you're getting near the road, that also, I never did that, though. So, lying, it was usually we're dealing with lying. Lying's bad. It destroys relationships. You can't have a good relationship without it, or with a person that is untruthful. But consistency is the most important thing. Kids need it. It's the most difficult thing in the world to live with anybody that is not consistent, because then you have no boundaries. You don't know today if it's closer or further away. You don't know how far you can go. Your boundaries change. That creates anxiety in your kids. You have no point of reference. If a child does the same thing twice and gets a favorable action one time and a negative reaction another time, how do they decide which behavior pattern is acceptable and which is not? So you have to be consistent. And again, it just means adhering to those you've made. And those should be the ones that you feel are important to your child, or important to their welfare, and your core values, the things that really matter to build into your kids. Those are the ones that you should stand on, I believe. So these rules should serve a purpose beyond just forcing the child to act in a certain way. It's not about controlling behavior. It's about building character. The rules and disciplines of our households have to be aimed not simply at keeping control and order, but we must recognize them as ways of teaching our kids. That's the primary objective of discipline, is teaching. If we establish rules and also penalties for infringing on those rules, then neglect to carry through with the penalty, we defeat the entire purpose of making the guideline. So you can't make exceptions, even if you don't want to do it. And Laura used to tell me, I remember, oh, be careful what you say. In the heat of the moment, you might say, something rash, and then you have to follow through with it, don't you? Or you have to apologize and say, I was being rash, and that's not a fair way to treat you. This is what the standard is. And, that's a good thing for them to see you humble yourself before them, of course. But at certain ages, that is not a good thing because they will start to take advantage of that. So try not to do that. Try not to be rash. If we're inconsistent, we cause our children to worry. We don't do what we say we're going to do. We create anxiety because hope deferred makes the heart sick, but desire fulfilled is a tree of life. So this is true even when it pertains to punishment. And I don't think this primarily is speaking to discipline or punishment, but it certainly is true about in the same way. So if you tell a child you're going to discipline them if they do something, and one time you carry through and the next time you don't, you're going to make a very confused child. And they're going to do everything in their power of persuasion for their actions to always be the exemption, the exception rather than the rule. So we need to understand why we tend to be so inconsistent. One reason is because we think we're doing our child a favor by backing off, postponing punishment. We're not. We're doing the opposite. You have to be consistent with that. So this is a really, really important point. This is something I learned the hard way, and just trying to pass that on to you as a seasoned parent. He who fails to use a stick, now that is talking about corporal punishment, hates his son. Again, you can make the stick out to be many things, but he who loves him is careful to discipline him. So it's the disciplining that is the important part, not how you do it. So I'm not against corporal punishment. I used it, but I would use it way differently and extremely more sparingly than I did with my own kids. So I think it has its place, but not as fanatically as especially a lot of Baptists tend to think. Foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child. The rod of discipline will remove it far from him. And Proverbs 23:13, do not hold back discipline from the child. Although you beat him with the rod, he will not die. So you're not allowed to beat him till he dies, okay? It should hurt, but it should not be abusive. That's why it's good to decide when you're in a reasonable mind and not mad what the extent of that is. Don't violate that. You shall beat him with the rod and deliver his life from the grave, from Sheol. So don't ever retaliate emotionally rather than doing what would be most beneficial for the child. So again, you can use take away their time, put them in timeout, things of that nature, limit their use of possessions, and certainly at times in public they will be embarrassed. You have to be careful of that. You want to make sure that you don't destroy their self-image. That's important. But at the same time, they have to learn. So that's a fine line to walk for sure, which is why it's really important to think about these things when you're not going through it, because when you're going through it is not the time to make these decisions. They should be made before. So let me just conclude. I think that's a good place. Our children need to know that they can bring great joy into our lives, and that a large portion of our happiness as parents, is contingent on their being happy too. That's what it says in Proverbs 23. My son, if your heart is wise, my own heart also will be glad. And my inmost being will rejoice when your lips speak what is right. Again, what better thing could the turnout be than to raise godly children? And it's not the end of the world if they aren't there right now. There's still time. So don't beat yourself up too bad about that. So, comments or questions on this? Anybody online? Do they have any comments or questions? Huh? Yeah, she's really sick. And I apologize. It was probably me that brought it back, but I stayed away until I was healed. So I had it week before last. Was it week before last? Well, whenever I came back from Las Vegas for that training session I did there. And y'all quiet this morning? Okay. Well, that's what I had for you. I hope that you were edified by that. I hope that helped. And I wish everybody happy Mother's Day online. I'm glad we're all here. We're not having lunch today, so we're just going to dismiss, and everybody's free to go. Any prayer requests before we close? Oh, I do have one thing we need to do. I just remembered. Go ahead, Emmy. Oh, okay. That's good. Well, that'll be 2 more back. So, I don't know, did any of you guys know Jay Wheeler's dad, Dan Wheeler? He passed on Thursday in his